All this is called bearding, the way they
hang down. See how they hang down like that? They kind of cluster and just stick together like a beard. So Rachel's carefully putting this final frame into the box of 10. Carefully, because you do not want to squish a bee. Keep them as content and happy that we're working with them as possible, so that they learn that as we are very careful with their hive, they'll learn to trust us and not flip out and become all defensive when we open the hive and start working with it. So that's the big key, is that you kind of move slow and smooth so that you're not causing alarm in the bees. You can shake them around a little bit and move them, and as long as you don't do anything really destructive to the hive, and you work, I think it's important also to work with the hive on a relatively frequent basis.
At least about every 2 weeks I check.
Yeah, so about every 2 weeks at least, then they become familiar with the fact that, you know, humans are opening the hive, humans aren't destroying the hive, so they seem to be bringing us some more frames and things that we can...
Okay, so we can move them back.
Okay, put honey into, so they actually become... It's like going to the dentist frequently or something.
You want to pick that up?
They become used to the fact that you're here and you don't mean them any harm, and they accept what you're doing to the hive. And that's a good place to be with beehives.
We want to put them back together.
Okay, so we have to put them back together on a base in the reverse order of what we took them off, because the brood is here in this box and you don't want that brood on the top. The brood is always in the bottom box, and then the honey production occurs above that. And I think the reason for that is because you're going to, at the end of the season, leave the brood box and leave enough honey for the bees to survive through the winter season. So beekeepers, we take great pains to make sure the brood is down below, because you don't want to be trying to work around the brood when you're harvesting honey. You just want to take the honey.
You ready?
Yep. So these boxes aren't too heavy right now. They do have a little bit of honey in them.
Is it even lined up?
Pretty good.
This corner is pretty hard there.
When these boxes, especially the 10 framers, the deeps, when they get full of honey, they can weigh upwards of like 70 pounds. That's why a lot of times we'll use the shallows, because it's a lot of heavy lifting, and the shallows will let you deal with a little bit.
You need more smoke?
Yeah, along the front they keep clustering there. So smoke basically makes bees move out of your way. They don't like smoke. We're just trying to do it for their own protection, so that they don't get crushed accidentally and then they become all alarmed.
Good.
And become unfriendly with us. So, and you've lost a viable worker, so you don't want to lose any bees, because even though there are upwards of 100,000 bees in a large hive, every one is important and valuable. The other key to the smoke is you want a very mild fire in there, that's smoky but not hot, because if you're not careful, if you get that smoker too hot, you can singe the bees' wings and then they can't fly. So then you've done more harm than good.
Shoot, I should have had you move one of those covers.
Where do you want that?
Well, I haven't eaten. So I'll just leave this here for now, and then I can grab it.
So Rachel, right now we've got a brood box on the bottom, and then these are honey production boxes on top, correct?
More or less, yes.
Okay. How do you know when you need to add a box?
You look and see at the ratio of what's in each frame. So are there lots and lots of eggs? And then how compact are the bees? You know, are they crowded and just, they're absolutely everywhere? You want to give them enough space so that they're not going to swarm, hopefully. But you don't want it too much space so that you open yourself up to pests and diseases getting in. So it's kind of a happy medium.
So
you want it congested but not crowded.
Explain what swarming means, because you rescued a swarm, and that's what this Alma is, a swarm rescued from the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
But what would happen if Alma decided to swarm on you? What's the actual series of events that takes place?
Though they would need to create a new queen, which we saw all those queen cells, so that could be because they are planning to swarm. Which would happen is the new queen would take a huge amount of the bees in this hive and move to a new location. And it's just because their conditions get too crowded and they decide they need to split off and go find a new house.
So in other words, they're dividing from one hive into two hives.
Yes.
Will they normally take about half the bee population with the new queen?
Probably. I mean, it's hard to know for sure, but it's usually about half, because there can be plenty of bees left behind, but other times they'll take so many of them you're left with a very small population. So I think it depends on the overall number of bees to begin with.
So you're not sure how they decide who goes and who stays?
I have no idea.
But basically a swarm occurs when perhaps the beekeeper has been a little negligent, hasn't added another box for them to grow into?
Could be, but it's not necessarily even adding the box. A lot of times you need to add space in each box. So maybe you take frames and you split them up and you put new frames that don't have brood or honey in them to help give them more space, so they're not locked in.
And no one quite knows who or how that decision to swarm is made,
Not
right?
really.
It's just some kind of a chemical trigger or something within the hive community.
Something like that.
That says it's time to produce some new queens. So then they'll take an egg, they'll form a larger cell, correct? Mm-hmm. They'll put one of the normal worker bee eggs in that queen cell.
I think the queen lays in a queen cell.
Okay, lays it in the queen cell.
Yeah, sometimes they develop it from eggs that are already there.
So the queen knows that she's creating another queen.
Maybe, but she's not responsible for feeding them.
Okay.
So they all would, it would be a worker bee unless...
So some worker decides, I'm going to feed this larva royal jelly continuously, and I'm going to raise a new queen.
Yep.
Okay. And then those queens, under normal circumstances, would fight to the death, right? Because there's only one queen allowed in a hive at a time.
Yes.
But in this case, that one is allowed to leave with half the bees. Is that how it works?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And so then they leave. What happens when you observe a swarm is, if you're out here in the bee yard and a swarm is occurring, you will see, like right now, you see some bees flying around here. It's late in the day, so they're sort of toning down a little bit now. During midday, there'll be a lot of bees flying, but they're going in and out. But when a swarm is occurring, you'll see an actual, like a vortex cloud of bees. It's very unusual and it's very obvious. You'll see this huge tornado kind of effect of bees in the air, and you'll go, it's enough to catch your attention. You know, and we see a lot of bees out here in the yard, but it's very dramatically different than just normal in and out bee flight. You'll see this huge vortex and you go, whoa, there's a swarm taking place. And then usually what they'll do is they'll fly a relatively short distance. Sometimes it's here within our own trees nearby, and they, for some reason, they like to pick trees quite often. I'm not sure why.
Especially dark spots.
Okay,
dark spot. I think because a dark spot would be more akin to a hive. It's dark in a hive. You know, there's no light. So I think that's attractive to them.
So you'll see, I assume the queen probably lands first.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Maybe.
We're not sure, but then the cluster will occur, and this is, they will kind of, what they're doing is regrouping, kind of getting all their travelers together, making a plan, and they're sending out scouts to look for a new location for the hive to take up residence, essentially. So that's the key time. If you're able to discover a swarm at that point, you can rescue it and put it in the boxes like these and give it a new home.
Yep.
So, for instance, if this swarm that was rescued from the university decided to swarm again, in other words, divide again, if they went to a nearby tree and we were on top of things and observed it, then we could actually go and start another hive and put this in our bee yard right alongside Alma.
Yeah.
Or near Alma. I don't know, would that be a problem? Because they smell the same.
They would smell the same, so you probably would have some drifting. They would probably go back to the old hive. So you're better off putting it in a new location.
Okay.
Or at least a fair distance.
Fair distance from this one.
Yeah.
So that they get acclimated to the new location.
Correct.
Because bees use the sun and all these different GPS type navigation things inside their brains to locate their hive, and the color markings on the hive, that's why we have some different colors here on the boxes. They use all of these tools for navigation, and if you would put a swarmed hive right next door to the hive they came from, it would probably be a little confusing for them. But if you moved it, probably, how far would you have to move it? 100 feet, 200 feet?
I mean,
maybe?
since it's a swarm, you probably aren't under the 2-foot 2-mile rule. So ideally over 2 miles away, so you don't have any occurrence. They would know to relocate themselves and reorient and figure out where their hive is. But they've already swarmed, so they're probably already in the mindset that they're going to have to reorient themselves to their new location.
But that window of time from the time you locate a swarm till the time you rescue it can be really pretty brief. A lot of times they will only do it's like a staging platform basically for them to kind of rest, regroup, send out scouts, find the new hive. They kind of figure out who all's with them and who all stayed behind. And once they find that new location, you'll see that cloud pick up again. They'll just lift off from the tree, pick up and start to do a vortex, and then off they all go in whatever direction that new location is. So it's a fairly narrow window of time in order to rescue that hive and give them a safe new home. And that's why they went down to the university at night, because who knows how long that swarm will be there. You have to really get it and take care of it when you find out about it immediately.